Well, I think it's very clear that the EU has basically dared Boris Johnson to walk away. They have signaled they are willing to keep talking, but if Boris Johnson wants to talk for another month or so, he has to acknowledge that. We will see today, but there's no doubt that the EU believes that they have the upper hand here. They called, as you mentioned, very explicitly for the UK to make the necessary compromises. And as they survey the next month or so, they probably look at a UK government that is going to be further enmeshed in the COVID pandemic. They're looking at a possible win for Joe Biden in the US presidential election and therefore further isolation of, if you like, Brexit Britain. And these are things that basically they believe will strengthen their position at the negotiating table. So they're certainly willing to continue talking. But if Boris Johnson wants to walk, he'll have to make the call.
Right. Does that leave the risk of a hard Brexit fairly high, at fairly elevated levels?
I think that, well, first of all, it's very clear that even if there is a deal, it's going to be a very shallow, very small deal, focusing predominantly on certain categories of goods. There will be very little, if anything, on services. So hard Brexit is a given. And I certainly believe that the risks that the risk that the EU is miscalculating, that Boris Johnson will believe that it's actually better to walk away and try to blame the EU at this stage for intransigence and on being unreasonable, plays better domestically in the UK than trying to negotiate what will be a very difficult deal to accept for the UK right to the bitter end. So there may be a miscalculation here from the perspective of the EU.
Let's assume, Jacob, that the Prime Minister agrees to continue these negotiations and they actually manage to overcome the outstanding differences over fisheries, competition rules and governance, which are quite difficult to achieve. And unless, if they do that, do you think that it's possible that they can actually overcome the impasse on the internal market bill as well? How do you think that they could actually overcome that impasse?
Well, again, the EU leaders today they were very clear in their communique. They said they basically needed the internal market bill to be gutted, if you like. They needed it to have all the clauses that breach, in their mind, international law removed for there to be a deal. But if there is a deal, I think that it would be fairly easy for the British government to remove those clauses because they would be able, in my opinion, once there was a deal, to secure a majority in the British Parliament for amending the internal market bill, which, when it passed, didn't pass the lower house of the House of Commons without significant controversy, and still, of course, hasn't passed the House of Lords.